The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to the Lord. Now someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." Jesus replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge or your arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against greed in all its forms, for although one may be rich, one's life does not consist of one's possessions." Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land had produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." He said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. Then I shall store all my grain and all the other goods, and I shall say to myself, 'Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry.' And God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus it will be for all who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ. The question is, what matters to God? Now, today we've got this wonderful juxtaposition between the first reading in the Gospel and then what matters to God stuck in between. Now, the first reading and the Gospel are basically the same readings. The first one comes from Koheleth, who was, the tradition tells us, Solomon in his old age. And when he was a young man, he was considered the wisest of all. In his old age, he was a doddering old fool. And he looked at all that he had accumulated and he says, vanity. Vanity of vanity, and all is vanity. All this stuff that we do and all this toil that we do, you work your rear end off, and what happens in the end? You die, and your brother-in-law gets it all. How vain! You toil under the sun, and to what end? And Jesus is saying exactly the same thing. He's coming up and he's saying, a man comes up and he says, "You know what? There's not enough for me and for thee." As a matter of fact, Buckminster Fuller once said, "There's only one reason for war. The only reason for wars is I don't think there's enough for me and for you, and I better take care of me." So the one saying, "Will you tell my brother to give me my share of the inheritance?" Now, I tell you, at this very moment, there is somebody at a lawyer's office negotiating against his brother or sister, and good families are going to be completely torn apart by greed, by the desire for more. All war happens because we see the other as other. And no matter how hard we try and how much we work and how much we collect and how much we get, it's not going to last. When powers and prestige and possessions becomes our God, it's going to fall apart. Now, I know you know what I'm saying is true. I know you know it in the depth of your heart. We all know that. The difficulty is we swim in a world where we are pitted one against the other. And we think somehow that if we have enough, we can eat, drink, and be merry. That is the ultimate folly. And God calls the man in the gospel today a fool. This night, your life is going to be taken from you. To whom will all this piled up wealth go? Your brother-in-law. Where does it end? We're probably living in the most disarrayed times in my own lifetime, as we have been pitted one against the other, as we have seen the other as the enemy. Where does it end? It can't end there. Because when we die, All that stuff we've accumulated, all that we've piled up, all that we've taken to ourselves is going to die with us. You know, Billy Graham's famous saying was that he has never seen the U-Haul follow the hearse. As a matter of fact, the only thing you're going to take to heaven with you is what you've given away on earth. And if you gave away mercy and forgiveness and love and union, and compassion, that's gonna go with you all the way for all of eternity, and that's going to give you joy. Koheleth says you can't even sleep at night because all you're doing is thinking about who's jerked you around, and who's hurt you, and how you're going to get back at them. And St. Paul says, no, that stuff's got to die. I'm sorry, either you're going to let it die now by not grasping onto it and holding onto it and thinking that it's God. Not that it's bad stuff. Oh, security is a wonderful thing. Wealth is a beautiful thing. Jesus has no problem with wealth. He's got a terrible problem with hoarding and greed. Our world is in the mess it's in today because of incredible greed. Nothing's enough. You know why? Because nothing on this earth can satisfy. And therefore, Paul says to the Colossians, here, I'm going to give you the secret. I'm going to give you the whole secret. Take all that stuff and let it go. And I want you to instead look at the things, well, he says above. But I really think a better word is look at the things inside. Because as these things die, as the outer world dies, as the shell dies, as all of our prestige and possessions and power dies, then we've got something, if we look hard enough, that will never die, that will be there forever. And that is nothing less, as Paul puts it so beautiful. Are you not aware that you are now living with Christ in God? Are you not aware that your deepest being is divine? Are you not aware that the Christ dwells in you and will never die? Are you not aware that when you are in the Christ, you have everything you need? There is nothing you need because it's all there. That's the secret. That's the secret. The outer world really is passing away, but there is an inner world that will never pass away. It is divine. It cannot die. And everything you need, you have. And the secret is to know it and to act on it, which now gives us the freedom not to judge the other, but to embrace her, to love him, to forgive him, to be compassionate with him. It's in you, and it's in them. For that same divine presence that is in you is in them. And like knows like. And when you can see with those eyes, you got it all. You've got it all. Somebody say amen.